Hi there, I'm Raya from Active Health Clinic, and today I wanted to speak to you about pacing. Now, some of you may have heard a story about the rock, the pebbles and the sand in a jar, and today I wanted to speak to you about sort of how that works. So there was a philosophy professor who once stood up in front of his class with an empty jar, and he then proceeded to fill that jar with rocks, and he showed it to his students and he said, "Is the jar full?" And they all said, "Yes, that jar looks full." He then proceeded to fill that jar with smaller pebbles, and he shook it up and made sure that those pebbles dispersed throughout the jar. And he turned to his students, he said, "Is the jar full?" And they said, yes, it's definitely full now. Next step was that he then poured some sand into the jar. And as you could see, that all of the sand began to filter through and fill the jar even further. He then looked at the students, he said, "Is the jar full now?" They said, "Yes, definitely." The last and final step was that he put water into the jar, and he looked at them, he goes, "Is the jar full now?" They said, "Yes, the jar is definitely full." So why I bring up this analogy is that this is very much like pacing. We spend a lot of our time trying to fit everything into our day and as much as we possibly can so that everything gets done. And what usually happens is we end up booming and busting, and we tend to do too much and then feel awful. And why I wanted to bring that up is sometimes we're filling our jar with the wrong things. Sometimes we put in too many pebbles that the rocks can't fit. Sometimes we've filled it with water and therefore, we can only put rocks in, we can't put the sand in, or we can't put the pebbles in. Pacing is a really fine, intricate balance of doing the right things first, then adding the other things in where appropriate. Whereas if you look at the example of the jar, if you were to start with putting the sand in first, the rocks and the pebbles probably wouldn't fit. Or if you were to fill the jar with pebbles, you can't fit the rocks, you can't fit the sand, or maybe a little bit, but not as much as you could in the past, and maybe not as much water. So the way we go about things will impact quite drastically as to how that actually fits in our days and what we can actually get out of that. So what I try and encourage patients to do is to have a look at what they're putting effort into. Are they really focusing on the rocks, which are the foundations first, or are they focusing on the smaller things that they shouldn't be putting as much energy into yet? So the biggest thing about pacing is setting up your foundations first and filtering the other things in. And this can be applied in standard pacing, but this can also be applied in post-setback based pacing. If you add the wrong things too soon, it means that you're not making that space for the other things. And it's not to say that there is a perfect way of doing any of this, but it is to say that you need to stay connected with your body, your jar, your rocks, your pebbles, your sand, your water, to make sure that you've got what you need. Everyone's dosage, everyone's plan, everyone's foundations is completely different. It is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and it's really important that you stay connected with that in your own way so that you know where your needs are and how you can make them work, okay? So I hope this analogy wasn't too botched, and I do apologize for that, but I just thought it's a really cool way of thinking about pacing and how we can make pacing work for ourselves, okay? If you have any questions, comment below. If you have any better analogies or how you explain things, then by all means comment below. If you found this video helpful, then share it. We are Active Health Clinic on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, those sort of things, so we do look forward to hearing from you. Bye.